A dead script can look temptingly close to a code. It has repeated marks, visible patterns, and the promise that one clever substitution will make the whole thing speak. Real decipherment is harsher. The marks may represent sounds, words, numbers, or several of those at once, and the language behind them may be uncertain. For this comparison, decipherment means more than guessing a royal name or recognizing a date. A successful reading must explain how the writing system works, produce repeatable readings across many texts, and survive checks by scholars who were not present for the original breakthrough. That requires two discoveries at once. The scholar must recover the values of the signs, and also identify the language those signs encode. A proposed sound can look convincing on one monument and collapse the moment it meets a different spelling, grammatical ending, or historical name. The strongest achievement should therefore combine 5 things: loud difficulty, a rigorous method, the amount of history recovered, the breadth of the readable corpus, and the durability of the result. A dramatic eureka moment helps the story, but it does not earn the title by itself. A bilingual text can act like a bridge, but even a bridge is not a dictionary. The same statement may be shortened, expanded, or reorganized in another language. Nouns provide anchors, yet names alone do not reveal verbs, grammar, or whether a sign represents a whole word or merely a syllable. The hardest cases are solved by convergence. Sign values predict new readings. Those readings fit known languages. Dates agree with archaeology. Repeated titles appear where rulers should appear. Each independent success makes coincidence less plausible. 4 breakthroughs dominate this field. Each turned silent marks into historical evidence. The question is which one did the most difficult work with the least convenient key and changed our picture of an entire civilization most completely. High on a limestone cliff in western Iran, Darius the Great ordered his victories recorded in Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian. The Behistun inscription was a royal message repeated in 3 languages, a monumental parallel text whose physical location made copying it an adventure before interpretation even began. George Friedrich Grotefend first extracted royal names from shorter Old Persian inscriptions. Henry Rawlinson then copied and studied the Behistun text, completing most of the Old Persian decipherment and helping open the way into the far more complex Elamite and Babylonian versions. Its consequence was enormous. Cuneiform was not one language, but a family of wedge-shaped writing traditions used across ancient Western Asia. Once the Persian version supplied leverage, scholars could test values against the parallel texts and build the disciplines that read Mesopotamian history from its own records. Yet Behistun supplied an unusually generous structure. One version used a relatively compact script. The king's genealogy supplied proper names, and 3 parallel accounts created repeated points of comparison. Brilliant work was still required, but the monument had been designed to repeat itself. Egyptian hieroglyphs presented a more deceptive problem. The pictures encouraged generations of scholars to treat the system as mystical symbolism. The Rosetta Stone instead carried one decree in hieroglyphic, Demotic, and Ancient Greek, placing a readable language beside 2 Egyptian scripts. Thomas Young identified useful patterns, including phonetic signs in royal names. Jean-François Champollion pushed further. By comparing names and drawing on his knowledge of Coptic, the latest stage of the Egyptian language, he showed that hieroglyphs could represent sounds as well as words and ideas. That mixed system was the trap. A bird might carry a sound in one place, represent a word in another, and help clarify meaning elsewhere. Champollion did not merely assign letters to pictures. He recognized that the script changed its behavior according to context. The reward was staggering. Monumental histories, religious texts, administrative documents, and private voices became readable across roughly 3,000 years of Egyptian writing. Few intellectual breakthroughs have restored so long a written past. But the Rosetta Stone was an exceptionally concentrated key. It supplied a substantial Greek version, a known decree, and royal names enclosed in cartouches. The decipherment remains one of scholarship's great achievements, though its central bridge was literally carved into the evidence. Linear B offered no translation at all. Excavators at Knossos and other Bronze Age palaces found thousands of clay tablets in an unknown script. The texts were short, repetitive, and mostly administrative, while the language behind them was disputed. Alice Kober treated the tablets as a system rather than a picture puzzle. She cataloged signs and built grids from changing word endings. Those patterns suggested inflection, meaning that words altered their endings to express grammatical roles. Her disciplined groundwork sharply narrowed what any successful language hypothesis had to explain. Michael Ventris then tested the possibility that the language was an early form of Greek, an idea many experts considered unlikely. When tentative place names and sign values began producing recognizable Greek words, the hypothesis generated predictions rather than isolated coincidences. The classic confirmation came when newly published tablets matched readings derived before Ventris had seen them. John Chadwick, a linguist, helped demonstrate that the strange spellings reflected the limits of a syllabic script trying to represent Greek. The result turned the tablets into the earliest known written Greek. Linear B is the strongest rival because its method was austere and predictive. It lacked a bilingual key and succeeded through statistics, grammar, geography, and controlled testing. Its limitation lies in the surviving corpus. Policy accounts reveal economy and administration in extraordinary detail, but rarely the wider political and narrative world people hope to recover. The decipherment of Maya writing is the GOAT. It wins because scholars recovered a complex logo-syllabic system without a Rosetta Stone, quenched an entrenched theory that much of the script did not record language at all, and then used it to rewrite the political history of an entire civilization. The surviving evidence was brutally fragmented. Most pre-Hispanic books were lost or destroyed. The remaining corpus was scattered across stone monuments, painted pottery, a few codices, and sites separated by forests and modern borders. Different cities also used artistic variants that made the same sign look unfamiliar. Early scholars made genuine progress with numbers, calendars, and astronomical tables. That success produced a dangerous confidence. The inscriptions were increasingly treated as timeless records of priests, ritual, and cosmic cycles, not as sentences about named rulers, wars, births, and deaths. A 16th century manuscript by Diego de Landa preserved a table that looked like an alphabet. It had disappointed researchers because the signs did not behave like ordinary letters. The apparent failure was actually a clue. Landa's informants had often supplied syllables, not single alphabetic sounds. In the early 1950s, Yuri Norizov argued that the script used phonetic syllables alongside word signs. A logosyllabic system combines logograms which can represent whole words with syllabic signs that spell sounds such as ka or ku. That mixture explained why the same word could appear in several visual forms. Kurozov's approach met fierce resistance, sharpened by Cold War politics and by the prestige of established interpretations. But the decisive question was not who proposed it. The question was whether phonetic readings could predict spellings across texts, produced centuries apart and hundreds of kilometers from one another. Tatiana Proskuryakov supplied a different line of proof. Studying patterns of dates on monuments, she showed that clusters corresponded to human lives and dynastic events. The inscriptions were not merely calendars. They marked accessions, deaths, successions, and the biographies of rulers. Heinrich Berlin's work on emblem glyphs connected inscriptions with particular kingdoms, while later scholars combined historical patterns with phonetic substitutions. A title, name, or verb could now be checked against dates, family relationships, and appearances at other sites. The script began to behave like a language because it was one. The mechanism is elegant but demanding. One block may contain a central word sign surrounded by smaller syllabic elements. Those added signs can spell part of the same word, clarify its reading, or preserve a grammatical ending. Redundancy, once dismissed as decorative complexity, became evidence. The historical reversal was profound. Monuments once described as anonymous ceremonial art became records of named kings and queens, alliances, captures, wars, rituals, and contested succession. At Palenque, inscriptions and archaeology could be joined into a dynastic history, rather than admired as mute ornament. Against Linear B, the difference is scale and resistance. Linear B was decoded with extraordinary predictive discipline, but its tablets came from a narrow administrative setting, and the language hypothesis resolved quickly once Greek began to fit. Maya writing required decades of converging work across scripts, art, calendars, languages, sites, and political history, while overturning a powerful scholarly consensus. The victory is qualified. Some signs remain uncertain, damaged passages resist reading, and the achievement belongs to a community rather than one heroic decoder. That is precisely why it matters. The greatest decipherment was not a magic key turned once, but a method strong enough to let many scholars recover voices that authority, destruction, and time had nearly made silent.